There's a Democrat Party, not the Republican Party, that thinks so little of Black America as the people of color that they make the case that being Black in America means we can't obtain a government ID to vote. And that's not only a ridiculous assertion, it's demeaning and it's insulting.
The soft bigotry of low expectations. It's something that you've probably heard mentioned here and there, but what does it refer to? It refers to this thought, this impression that people, mostly on the left in our modern society, have of Black people, people of color, minority groups, people they view as less than, disenfranchised, etc. And essentially what it entails is they aren't as capable. They aren't as proficient. They aren't as savvy. They should have lower expectations placed upon them in society. And so they need lower scores to get in. They shouldn't meet certain requirements to get jobs. Because, come on, guys, we can't expect them to achieve a certain level that we expect others to achieve. They're just not as good. That's what it is. And you hear it explicitly from people on the left all the time. One of the worst cases of this, of course, is voter ID. You'll hear just blatant racism when people say things like, Black people just, they don't have IDs. They're incapable of getting IDs. They don't know how to go to the DMV or use the internet or whatever it may be. Now, of course, these are the same people who required IDs and vaccination cards during the pandemic, and they had no problem placing that requirement on Black Americans. All of a sudden, that soft bigotry of low expectation disappeared. So it's also a tool that they use at their convenience. They have no problem saying that you should have an ID to verify your age when you purchase alcohol or tobacco. I've never heard a leftist say that that's a racist policy. Weird, isn't it? It's weird how ID is only a racist requirement when it comes to voting. I wonder why that is.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Graham, for having me here today to speak about voting rights in America, the country that I love dearly. More importantly, I'm here to talk about the left's soft bigotry of low expectations. Because it's a Democrat Party, not the Republican Party, that thinks so little of Black America as the people of color that they make the case that being Black in America means we can't obtain a government ID to vote. And that's not only a ridiculous assertion, it's demeaning and it's insulting. When it comes down to it, many of my colleagues on the left like to pretend that we're still living in the 1950s. Well, we're not. I've got some good news for you. It's 2024, and I know what year it is because I've been Black for just over 40 years. And I'm also the son of a retired lieutenant colonel who grew up in the segregated South. You see, my parents grew up in a Jim Crow South in the 50s and 60s in New Orleans, Louisiana. Their next generation, my parents had 3 kids. My sister, brother, and I all went to West Point, all 3 of us. We all served our country in combat. And I sit before you today as a sitting United States Congressman in a district in a suburb of Houston, Texas, that's a white majority district, that President Trump would have won by 25 points, and I won by almost 30 points. And that doesn't happen unless we've made some incredible progress in this great nation. Now, my colleagues on the left like to say that common sense voting laws, including requiring a government-issued ID, are racist, discriminatory, and burdensome. Do you know what my father had back in the 40s and 50s before it was even cool? A government-issued ID. And continuing in his footsteps, I too have multiple government-issued IDs. And while that might be shocking to many people in this country, you may ask, how's that happen? It's very simple. It's personal responsibility for all Americans in this country, regardless of what you look like. Sitting with me today is my global entry card, my military ID card, my Texas driver's license, my Texas license to carry, because that's how we roll in Texas, my congressional card, and of course, the good old-fashioned American passport. What sorcery is this? What am I, the Black Houdini? How was I able to pull off the impossible and attain not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 government-issue IDs? Personal responsibility in this country. I fought for this country as an Apache helicopter pilot to protect free and fair elections, and having a government-issued ID isn't racist, it's American. You need to have an ID to drive a car, to check into the airport, open a bank account. You need an ID for basically everything to be a responsible adult in this country, except for voting, apparently, according to the left. Black America does not need well-meaning liberals putting their arms around us to telling us how we should go to the polls. In fact, if you look at recent headlines and polls, you will find that black men specifically in this country are more fired up than ever to participate in the next presidential election. And I think I know why, and I'm really looking forward to these results. For the record, in the 2022 midterms in Georgia, it proved that election integrity and ballot accessibility can be achieved hand in hand. After the 2020 election, Georgia passed a voter election integrity law, and subsequently, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against the state of Georgia alleging that the Georgia law is discriminatory and aims to restrict citizens from voting. President Biden even called this law, and I quote, Jim Crow 2.0. Really?
I remember that.
In my humble opinion, referencing Jim Crow for common sense election integrity laws is offensive to those who actually experienced Jim Crow, like my parents and their parents before them. In fact, the law wasn't discriminatory at all, because in the 2022 midterms, Georgia voters shattered voter turnout records across the state. And despite that record-breaking turnout in Georgia, the DOJ lawsuit is still pending. I suspect that it's because that record-breaking turnout resulted in a Republican governor being elected in Georgia, but I digress. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, which I tend to do. I have a lot of respect for John Lewis, but the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is not about protecting voting rights. It's about solidifying Democrat power nationally. It's about federal control over state and local elections, which, by the way, is unconstitutional. It's about diminishing the security of our elections. And voter integrity laws aren't discriminatory. They are required for a functioning constitutional republic. I'm going to tell you today, I categorically reject the soft bigotry of low expectations. Black Americans and people of color are proud. We expect more of ourselves. That's what Black excellence really means to me. And above all else, we don't need a new solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Let me be clear. Making it to the polls to vote in person with an ID in this country today is a very low bar, extremely low bar. We can do it, white people can do it, black people can do it, Americans can do it. And we should all want that for free and fair elections. If you want to be on the right side of history, you should reject the Democrats' party's attempt to wind the clock back 70 years. Because I'm sitting right here in front of you, and I'm here to tell you we've come a long way. Let's continue this progress. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, sir, for having me.
Whew, a lot of truth in that. So you got to think to yourself, just for a second here, of the left, of Democrats who are advocating for this, saying that black people are less likely to have ID. Black people can't obtain ID. How low must your opinion be of black people if that's what you truly think? And it is weird how that objection never comes forth except for in the case of voting. So if you look at this just objectively and say, that's weird, right? Why are they saying that it's racist to require ID for this one thing, yet not saying it for everything else? And also, the same people who make that assertion were the ones who pushed for vaccine cards and ID during the pandemic to just function in society. If ID is racist, then that was clearly a very racist policy of them. But for some reason, it was never called out as such. So either ID is racist or it's not racist. And if ID is racist, then they have to admit that they instituted a racist policy in places like New York, where they required vaccine cards and ID to even go into a restaurant, to go anywhere in public, to go to the gym. And of course, they would have to concede that driving is racist, buying alcohol is racist, buying tobacco is racist, just about everything is racist. Opening a bank account is racist. All these things require ID. So why are they not racist as well? And it's only voting, the thing that you guys care the most about because it affects whether you get to keep your stranglehold on power. Another thing that he mentioned fleetingly, but I think it's very important, is that for the most part, the individuals you see advocating this, saying that ID is racist, are almost without exception white liberals. Malcolm X said the white liberal is the most dangerous thing facing Black Americans. There is this need to always speak on behalf of Black Americans that a white liberal has, and it's very odd. There's this need to always feel offended on behalf of Black Americans when it comes to the white liberal. Black people aren't saying this. There are tons of videos of people going out into neighborhoods that are predominantly Black and asking people, do you think requiring an ID is racist? Do you have an ID? Do you know where to obtain an ID? And of course, the answer is always a resounding, no, I don't think it's racist. Of course I have an ID, and yes, I know where to get an ID. These are just minimal expectations we place on our citizens in this country, regardless of race, to function. And it's very disingenuous, it's very bigoted and racist to say otherwise. I really liked that clip from Wesley Hunt. I think he summarized it well. Let me know what you guys think. If you do think ID is racist, requiring ID to vote is racist, please describe your argument in the comments. And look, I'm always open to having my mind changed, but where I stand right now is that is very clearly the soft bigotry of low expectations. Low expectations you're placing on a particular group because you think less of them, you think they're less capable, and I disagree with it entirely. Tell me what you think. Please subscribe to the channel. I love you guys and I appreciate you. Bye.